Hello, everyone. I am here with a man who certainly needs no introduction to anybody who has seen a single puck drop in New England and has been in the Boston and New England scene for many years. So it is just such a delight for me to sit down. As Jack and I were talking earlier, we get about a half a sentence worth of conversation between me trying to get cameras set up and things like that, and him preparing for the game. So it's very exciting for me to actually sit down one-on-one and talk about Jack Edwards, the man, the legend, and now someone who's getting ready to go into probably, I don't want to speak for you, the strangest hockey playoffs you've maybe ever experienced.
Yeah, I was just reading an email about this because the stakes are so high. Major League Soccer has, this record date, had two teams drop out of its restart. And because once one player on a team gets it, everybody gets it. I think the Dallas team had 10 players come down with it. Nashville just had 9 players test positive for it. So they withdrew from Major League Soccer's tournament. That's important in Major League Soccer context. But what happens if, say, the Pittsburgh Penguins reach the conference final and all of a sudden 8 skaters test positive? What does the NHL do then? Yeah. What do they do? There's no clear plan. There's language that there are contingencies to delay or cancel, but there's no firm policy out there. And, you get the feeling that if the Bruins have guys like, I'm not devaluing them, but guys like Jake DeBrusk and Chris Wagner and John Moore come down with it, the NHL will say, go on. But if the Pittsburgh Penguins have Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang test positive, all hell's going to break loose. So, what is the policy? And that's not clear to me yet.
Your starting goalie goes down, you're in trouble. I mean, nothing against any backup, but seriously. And everybody's health is paramount in all of this, and their families and anybody else they come in contact with afterwards. It's certainly more important than the sport. But like you said, it'll be names like what game am I watching if you're listening to this on the radio? Because it'll be names that they'll be asking you to put some skates on. You've got enough experience with the game.
Yeah.
Be ready. Yeah, I'd bring them with you to the rink just in case.
And as well as anybody, being part of our production team, that one of the most enjoyable things about the Stanley Cup playoffs and hockey in general is the ability to lay out and let the crowd tell the story. And that wave of sound that motivates players on both teams, because so many teams, especially these Boston Bruins, feed off hostile energy.
And good or bad.
there's going to be zero energy in the building. And I don't know how the players are going to react to that, especially veteran players. Zdeno Chara has not played in front of empty seats in like 25 years. And one wonders how he is going to be able to adjust. I don't question his motivation, but there's a natural rhythm to the game. And part of that rhythm is your ability to deal with it emotionally and channel that energy that comes from external sources into your playing effort or into your broadcasting effort. And that's going to be a really weird thing. It's going to seem like one hand clapping a lot, I'm afraid.
I would recommend, when I played youth hockey and we scored a goal, you lean over the boards with the stick and smash it against the board so you make as much noise as you can. I would recommend that the players do that. And I think you'll have to take out of your lexicon, if you will, the crowd goes wild, because you just won't. There may be one or two people who snuck into the bleachers somehow, but may not come through the broadcast.
And the empty seats express no emotion. Right? Doesn't have the same ring to it, does it?
Not quite. And just a year ago, you and I were on the NESN stage, and I described it to people who weren't there. It was like Woodstock. It was just, packed with people, black and gold. And you were getting ready for the broadcast, and it was just a fun party scene that is, being removed from the game, which is a shame. So I just wish everybody in the sport, the absolute best.
Yeah. This is such a weird time, isn't it? Because you are jonesing for what was normal, but every time we see photos of people closely mingled in a bar or at the beach, or look through photographs of concerts we've been to,
Mm-hmm.
you think the first thing that goes through your head is super spreader event, and I my mother's going to turn 92 next month. She lives 3.5 miles away.
Good for her.
She's not in the best of health, so we're seeing her like 2 times, 3 times a day. Everybody in my nuclear family is going to visit her on a regular basis. So, we're being super careful. And every time our Venn diagram intersects with anybody else's Venn diagram, we're really careful about, that person's exposure to my mother. And something that tends to get overlooked when we talk about sports resuming is all the other people that the athletes and coaches and staff members are necessarily going to be in touch with if they're not living in a hermetically sealed bubble. And, so far, the Major League Soccer experiment is not going well.
Yeah.
They're living in a bubble, and
Yep.
2 teams have dropped out. So, yeah, this is nothing to be poo-pooed about.
Now, talking about proximity, we're used to seeing you and Andy Brickley literally shoulder to shoulder. Is there going to be another piece of glass put up between the two of you? And
Yeah.
you must communicate in between periods. Are you going to put little notes up against the windows? So don't forget to talk about so-and-so. I mean, how are you going to pull that off? Or have you even heard?
I think Brick has been wishing for this for years. But we're going to be 6 feet separated. I think I'm going to learn of the exact protocols in the next few days. But yeah, I think there's going to be a plexiglass barrier, and NESN has rearranged the HVAC to the rooms where personnel are going to be working. So, God bless them for doing physical improvements to the building while no income is getting generated. I cannot say enough good things about NESN's top level management, because I know a lot of C-level executives through my family connections, and they are cutting and slashing and burning, and NESN has held the line so far, and that is incredible because the Bruins vanished, and then the Red Sox vanished, and the revenue streams have evaporated. And it's not like NESN can go to a talk show format, that's that's not NESN's bread and butter.
Sure.
It's just it's remarkable.
And I think too, from the fan standpoint, we can only NESN is a great company to work with. I'm proud to work alongside of them as well. But the fans can only watch so many top 10 shows. You're digging for information that Thank God that Tom Brady made the announcement when he did, and then they waited. I jokingly said with Gary Tanguay, did you ask Gronk to wait 2 weeks before he announced he was going to join Brady? So you had something else, something different you could talk to. And so the topics have been a little thin, but you guys have soldiered on.
Yeah, well, it's the weirdest time I've ever lived through, but thankfully, knock on wood, it hasn't affected anybody in my immediate family.
Excellent. Well, wish your mother a happy birthday when it comes along, and all the best to her and all of you. Looking at, and this is almost irresponsible of me, one of the funnest things about working with you, and I know you've heard this before, whenever I ask people, I should have done a sound check right off the top of this, because when I ask people, I put a microphone on them and I ask them to do a sound check, they do. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, and this droll little voice that isn't the one they're going to use. But I'm like, okay, at least I know I have audio coming through. So, Jack, would you do one of your Jack Edwards audio tests if I asked you to test your microphone?
Yeah. Outlined against a blue-gray October sky, the four horsemen rode again. In dramatic lore, their names were famine, pestilence, destruction, and death. These are only aliases. Their real names are Stuhldreher, Miller, Crowley, and Layden. And Grantland Rice went on to, write the four horsemen of the apocalypse in Notre Dame's epic win over Army at the Polo Grounds. The final score to that game, I believe, was 13-7. And, four horsemen of the apocalypse, it's recalling something like the 73-0 NFL championship game in days of yore, but it was 13-7. But yeah, I started that because I read Harry Reisner's autobiography, Before the Colors Fade, and I picked up a couple of things from that book. One of which was when he was going to a news event, he would bring an unlined sheaf of papers, and he didn't want to restrict his note-taking to anything, to even lines on a paper. And so I started doing that, and I realized that you could organize your notes in unconventional fashion if unconventional things happen. The other was that Harry Reisner, instead of doing 1, 2, 3, 4, used to recite the preamble to the Constitution. So, we the people, so I decided to do something on the sports side of it. So a nod posthumously to Harry Reisner, who was a great reporter.
Okay. Well, thank you for your audio tests. They're always, I stop on my tracks. I listen like I've never heard it before, but I'm like, now that's Jack. We're working with Jack today. That's a good thing. That's good. So thank you for doing that. Speaking of preparation, what as I say about athletes, we sit on our couch and we're couch coaches, and we tell you what he did wrong, what was he thinking, and good or bad, we see their performances, but we don't see the other million hours that goes into preparing for each game. Do you have a typical kind of day that you do, pregame, and what do you do? What are the things that you do every time, or depending on the team or whatever, that you do to prepare for games?
Yeah, I'm a man of systems, and I believe in systems. I trust the systems, and I've got a ritual that's virtually to the minute on game days. And it basically is, I wake up, download a pantload of data, which I've I've created a system where it used to be I'd have to search and fetch the data, and now I've got a system that's semi-automated. It takes me about half an hour. It used to take me 2.5 hours. So that's really good that I can do less clerical work. And then I analyze the data, individualize it by every eligible skater and goalie for that night's games. Then review what's gone on in the league since I went to sleep.
Sure.
and
Yeah.
Then I specifically study that game tonight, look at the team trends, look at who's hot, who's not, injury histories. If I have time, fight histories that are getting more seldom, but then depending on the circumstances, I may go to the morning skate. I used to go to every single morning skate, but they, over the last few years, have become more and more mass media oriented, press conference type meetings, and less informative, less intimate. Morning skates used to be just a great place to gather nuggets, and some still are. And that's why I say depending on circumstances. But a lot of teams travel with giant media contingents now, and you just can't get to the players individually. So it's kind of a waste of time compared to other methods. Then in the early afternoon, I have a good lunch, work out to get oxygen into my brain and to get away from the game. Then I study video, check my charts on every individual player, check my charts on the team, pack up the computer, go to the venue, reassemble the computer, make sure it works, and then we're into pre-production. And meanwhile, I've been back and forth with Brian Zaccello, our producer, Rose Marakian Wheeler, our director, Sophia Yerkstovich, our reporter, and of course Brick, keeping apprised of what they know and what their feelings are about that evening's telecast.
And I have to imagine that the exponential growth of technology provides you, our toothbrushes are now high def. I mean, it gives you access to information that when we all first started, you had to get a piece of paper or a newspaper or something like that. I imagine it makes your life easier.
Yeah, it's easier now that I've learned to manage it. Steve, before I got a handle on it, it overwhelmed me, and I couldn't cut it off. And I reached the point about 6 or 7 years ago where I just shut it down. And I figured if anything massive happens, somebody will let me know. but I shut off the media at about 4 o'clock and for a 7 o'clock game, because the information age is a double-edged sword. One side of it is you have access to billions of data points. The downside of it is you're curious what the billion and first data point is. So, it took me a long time to manage it. And having started in radio news and radio sports, I'm kind of an infoholic. So, my pursuit of new information is always a priority. And I realized that it was getting in the way of my game prep. So, yeah, it took me a long time, probably 15 years of better and better and faster internet. And to say, there's a limit,
Sure.
just one drink at the bar instead of 17, you know.
Excellent. The now you've been working with Andy Brickley for some years, so you guys have it down. How much pregame prep do you guys usually take, and do you decide period by period? How do you decide what topics you're going to, in between the downtimes, that you're going to discuss, or who you're going to talk about?
If I ever get around to writing my autobiography, at least one fat chapter is going to be about Andy Brickley. I have worked with well over 100 analysts in my career. He is easily the most insightful, quick thinking, analytical, master of language that I have ever dealt with. He's like a cat that gets thrown out of a window and always lands on its feet. No matter how rocky or steep the terrain may be, because Lord knows what's going to come out of my mouth every time I inhale, right? I don't even know. I sometimes watch air checks and say, did I really say that? It's hockey.
Yeah.
There are a lot of random events, but I have had many experiences in my broadcasting career, and some analysts really, really want to know everything, so they're never surprised. Brick is the absolute opposite of that. The genesis of this attitude that we've taken, I know I'm burying the lead, but the genesis of this attitude that we've taken is a result of a game that Brick and I worked together for the Versus Network, which was the evolution of the Outdoor Life Network, which became NBC Sports Network, just when Versus had secured the NHL rights. It was a game in Minnesota, in St. Paul, and the producer had us rehearse the open 7 times. And it got to the point where we were trying to remember the exact wording of what we had said in previous rehearsals. And we went on the air, and the open sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, it was terrible. And it sounded as if we were like first graders at a school play trying to remember our lines, and especially me. And the game, we did the telecast, and the game ended, and we walked out of the booth, and we took a couple of strides in silence, and Brick turned to me and said, "Let's never rehearse again."
Wow.
And from that day forward, we have never, ever rehearsed anything. Producer Brian Cicello goes through the rundown with us in the pregame, in pre-production, and explains to us what graphics we're going to see, shows the video to us, but we rehearse none of our dialogue.
Wow.
And sometimes I fall on my face. Brick always lands on his feet, but it's spontaneous, energetic, and it's better for both of us. And so we kind of keep our distance on game days, except for essential communication. But we've worked together almost 16 years now. So
awesome.
Yeah, we're, I don't know, it's like 1,000 and something games together.
Sure.
But yeah, so we're we fit like an old pair of shoes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And even though he's done it for a while, as you say, Brick, his NHL experience, both as a Bruin and playing for other teams, is fascinating. But I think the challenge for all of us is taking that experience and putting it to words concisely, and bite-sized bites that people who've never played hockey feel like they were on the ice with you, and those who have played at a high level can sit there and say, both of you guys know what you're talking about. And that's part of the entertainment of sitting down to watch a Bruins game. But that's fascinating to hear that the two of you are so spontaneous. I also got to work with Brick. NESN had a show on course with Andy Brickley where we'd go on a golf course.
Won an
and he would have
Emmy.
different guests. It won an Emmy. That was first season. I said, spoiled. Should never get one your first season.
Yeah, it's like having a birdie on the first hole. The rest of your round, you're walking through the woods.
But great fun to work with him. But he would work with Justine, the producer, and she'd say, talk about this, this, and this. Okay. Can I just talk about this? Absolutely. And that's probably why the show works so well. But it was great fun working with Brick. And it's great to see his second career to bring his knowledge and his experience and enthusiasm, because that's what people enjoy. And it's the only true reality show, if you ask me. Reality shows are so overproduced, in my opinion, that it's almost predictable. Whereas hockey, any sport, it's particularly hockey, where it's so fast, a game, the momentum can change on one shot. That's all it takes.
Yeah, and Brick is able to. He describes it as a film strip memory. I don't know how much of our audience is familiar with classroom film strips, but back in elementary and middle school, which used to be called junior high, sometimes teachers would have, in essence, a PowerPoint presentation, which was a film strip which had a 33 and a third RPM record playing, and that would be the narration, and there would be a tone to cue the teacher to wind it ahead to the next frame of the film strip. And so you would watch this, and it was better than having your teacher lecture you about the Pythagorean theorem, so you went along with it. But Brick is able to see a play and recall exactly the touch points that made that play happen or not happen. And he is constantly in communication with the truck while I'm calling live play-by-play, and he's got one eye on what's happening in real time on the ice, and the other eye is kind of reviewing and talking to the truck and saying, cue that back to where Brandon Carlo administers the check in the Bruins zone. And sure enough, Patrice Bergeron's shot is a result of Brandon Carlo's check behind Tuukka Rask. And I, pardon me for digressing, but it is a video podcast, so
sure. Oh, you go right ahead.
Nobody's going to tell me that there's there's a time limit. So so many New Englanders have gotten to the NHL in the last 10 years. It's really remarkable. And if you've been involved in youth hockey and you've been involved in travel hockey, a player, by the time he gets to be draft age, has probably had at least 12, maybe 15 different coaches. But every single player has watched Bruins on NESN and heard a singular voice, and that's Andy Brickley. And I cannot help but think that beneath the surface, beneath the radar, he has had a subliminal effect on the development of youth hockey players in New England, because while they've been hearing all kinds of different systems, all kinds of different drills, all kinds of different coaching philosophies. They've heard one guy teaching them the game, and that voice is Andy Brickley. And for that alone, not to mention his spectacular career at UNH and his NHL career, he is one of the icons of hockey in New England for all time. And I think that goes completely unappreciated. And I've been around some great hockey minds. I've been really fortunate, starting with Charlie Holt, who was the legendary coach at the University of New Hampshire, who let me read his coaching notebook, which is a personal diary. And I learned so much from him. And, so many people in the hockey community have helped me. Brick is the greatest hockey mind I've ever been around. And I think that really goes underappreciated.
Because he makes it look so easy.
Yeah, right.
And he has this information and he has an enthusiasm about it that you're not being talked down to. You're being brought along as a teammate. So that, and I also did as I worked with you, the Bruin fan fests. That we would do, this big show would go to a city, all these things we can't do anymore, but
super
they would
spreader
have this
event, right?
Well, so that's not going to happen. But we went to different cities, and you and Brick individually would go to a tent, and the fans would come up, shake hands, all the things you can't do anymore. Shake hands, no masks, get autographs, get a selfie, and he would just, I'd get some footage of that too, and just loved how people are used to seeing you guys on television. That's the safe zone. But now they're able to stand next to you, and it's just like, they don't know what to say. This is their chance. And they're like, can I have a picture? Absolutely. And you guys just make them feel comfortable, like, just hop on the couch and let's watch a game together. So that, on and off the ice, he is the same gentleman. Both of you are the same gentleman that we get to enjoy on TV. And since you digressed, I need to digress for a point that I almost forgot. You were talking about the impact that fans have on a game. And the Bruins, I get to go, not all of them, but I get to go do a handful of practices. And the crowd that turns out for Bruins practices is, something beholden. And they're cheering. This is during your drills. People cheer and a guy, hits the post. They're like, oh, and the same effect. So I think, like you were saying before, it's going to be a major. In football, they pipe noise into the practice stadium to get that game feeling. And I think they're going to have headphones to experience it when there's no noise at all. Or as I said, over the boards with the stick, whack it as hard as you can. I know they're expensive, but hit them, and that's about as much noise as you may get to hear after a goal.
Yeah, it's wacky, and I shudder to consider this possibility, but I certainly hope that the National Hockey League doesn't do the Pee-wee tournament thing and blow the ship's horn after every goal, no matter who scores it, right?
Yeah.
It's just like that would so cheapen the event. If you're gonna have no fans, have no extraneous noise. To try to simulate a hockey crowd, sort of gets in the way. If it's gonna be bare naked hockey, let's hear the audio. Send a disclaimer on the screen every 20 minutes. As Gordie Howe said, I speak two languages, English and Bulgarian, so can you imagine hearing Marchand trash talk just before the drop of the puck? I mean, uncensored? I mean, that would be brilliant, right?
It would. Mike them all, Mike every player, but particularly him. So now, Jack, I got to put you to the test at least once.
Yeah.
I want to know Jack Edwards' all-time all-star team for each position and coach.
Ooh. Wow. I hesitate to do this on the philosophical basis that I will name a team, but my barroom suggestion is who's on your second team, because some of them are totally obvious. But also, I use the Jesse Owens Usain Bolt comparison. Who was the greater sprinter? Well, obviously, in empirical measurement, Usain Bolt is a faster man than Jesse Owens ever was. But if you put Usain Bolt back in the 1930s, facing what Jesse Owens faced, not having the nutritional guidance, the coaching, the facilities, all that elite amateur athletes, and now professional, even in the Olympic athletes, are privy to, Jesse Owens probably wins that race. If you put Jesse Owens in the 21st century, maybe Usain Bolt wins that race. But it's impossible to compare Tom Brady realistically to John Elway, because Elway got knocked down 75 times every Sunday just for the fun of knocking him down. If you breathe on Tom Brady, there goes the flag. The rules are different, and full marks to Brady for being the best ever at reading coverage and knowing where receivers were going to be and putting a catchable ball in that little 1 square foot area. But to compare Sammy Baugh to John Elway to Tom Brady from 3 different eras, it ought to be good enough for a player to have been the best in his era, because that's all he could compete against.
Sure.
So
let me rephrase the question. Let me rephrase the question then, make it easier for you. Who in those positions do you enjoy watching, whether they're a superstar or anything else? Who do you enjoy and talking about?
Well, present day, I would probably go with Crosby centering Ovechkin and Pasternak, just for enjoyment factor. Sidney Crosby is so thorough in his preparation. He's got brilliant physical skills, but it's the way he thinks the game that is just astounding. He made a behind the back pass earlier this season, which is almost a year long now. But going forward to the goal line, a blind backhand pass that was right on the stick. And, his teammate just was almost embarrassed to score the goal. Was celebrating the pass more than that. And Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer of his era, and may end up, if he can stay healthy and the league gets back to an 82 game schedule in time for him to enjoy his youthful legs, may pass Gretzky. He's the only guy who's got the legitimate Henry Aaron versus Babe Ruth shot. I discount Barry Bonds, who blew up like somebody attached a bike pump. And Pasternak is like the little kid who lives down the block, who comes out and just dazzles everybody. And you can't believe this kid is doing this stuff. And I asked him about the moves he makes one-on-one during his rookie season. I said, do you do this spontaneously and just invent it on the fly, or do you think out these moves? Because I, in my previous life as a reporter, once asked this of Michael Jordan. And Jordan said, I kind of invent it in midair, and sometimes I change direction in midair, which is a physical impossibility. But if you watch Jordan highlights, you see it. And Pasternak said to me, "No, I think every single move through." And it's one thing to think of it, but it's quite another to think of it in the speed of the modern day NHL. And it's a third thing to be able to pull it off. But he does it every single game. And this guy is just at the beginning of his prime years. I mean, this guy could be a prolific history-making scorer. And, if he can stay healthy and if he continues to have good line mates, the future is unlimited for him. Defensively, that's really tough. I really enjoy Brent Burns, whose abilities enabled him to do almost anything for his team. He played wing for Minnesota. He's been a Norris Trophy winning defenseman. They kind of have him as a freelancer, but if he is to be a shutdown defenseman, he can play lockdown defense. Victor Hedman probably also makes my list because I think JT Miller gave me a morning skate soundbite, which was when Miller was playing for Tampa Bay. And I said, "You've played against him, now you play with him. How do you describe Hedman?" And he said, "Well, I'm really glad I'm on his team now, because when he is on you in a corner, you remember Letterman's show, how he used to jump up against the Velcro wall, and he couldn't get himself unstuck? JT Miller said that's what it's like to have Victor Hedman on you in a corner."
Wow.
And if you look at it, Hedman is such a brilliant skater, but that almost gets overlooked by his physical prowess, because he's a monstrous strong man and he can envelop a player, and guys get stuck on the Velcro wall. And as for goaltenders, it is such a mercurial position. I'm torn between two guys I've seen a lot. Tuukka Rask is just a marvel of consistency, and the only thing he has not done is to win a Stanley Cup. And get over it, people. But on the other hand, Carey Price, 2014, the Bruins had it just perfect. They had the team, they had the President's Trophy, they had confidence, and Carey Price just eliminated them. And I know he's had a couple of up and down years, but look who's playing in front of him. That's a decor that is really, really young. I still believe that Price is going to win a Stanley Cup before he hangs it up. I hope it's not with Montreal. but yeah, those two guys, flip a coin.
As a matter of fact, when I was shooting on course with Andy Brickley, he had the Pittsburgh Penguins coach as one of his guests because he has Massachusetts connections.
Sully, what a great guy.
He could drive a ball that was like, can anybody track this thing?
Unbelievable
nicest guy
athlete.
In the world.
Unbelievable athlete. Yeah.
And first drive, Brick said, I got my work cut out for me. And Brick can play golf. He is a golfer.
Oh, yeah.
But Coach Gully said about he could get a call from Crosby any hour of the day or night. And he'll say, Coach, listen, I was watching this other game, and did you see this move? And he will break down the play, or he'll have a thought. I'm thinking we should try something like this in practice. What do you think? And he said he is such a student of the game. Which is like you were saying, that's what makes him so effective, makes him the best, makes him such a great leader for the Penguins organization, that he couldn't say enough nice things about him. Just how every day, every moment, he is just so present in the game. And we have to give at least an honorable mention to Tim Thomas, who, it just flipped on his head back when they did. And not to take anything away from Tuukka, I just love Tuukka's approach. I loved watching him play, but his performance, and then of course capping it off, winning the Stanley Cup, was what I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but it never gets tired for all the fanfare and just the excitement of being in the hunt and then winning the big game.
Yeah, well, Timma, it's that guy is in his own orbit, and God bless him for it. Well, when it came time to pick the all-time Bruins fantasy team, the first goalie chosen by me was Tim Thomas, and if you're talking about greatest Bruins goalies of all time, I think he's it. And Timmy came to the Bruins really far into his career. Mike O'Connell was the general manager, and I recall the Bruins, I think we opened it at Tampa Bay. And back in the day, we used to stay in St. Petersburg, which was a long way from the arena, which is over in Tampa, Channel side. And I was walking through the hotel with OC, who's a tremendous guy. And he said, I just signed a goalie because Andrew Raycroft was holding out. And OC said, I just signed a guy as an insurance policy. He was the Finnish goalie of the year, guy named Tim Thomas. And I sort of shrugged it off. Good signing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Jack, thank you so much for sitting down. It was great fun having to put 3 and 4 sentences together with you. I mean, it's so not what we usually get to do, certainly not on game day. Best of luck to you. Again, a happy birthday to your mother next month. You can wish it to her today if you'd like, from all of us. But best of luck. I hope the playoffs happen. I know you and Brick will make it as much fun as possible for those of us watching the game. And best of luck with everything, Jack.
Well, thanks, Steve. You're a great pro and a good friend. Thanks.
Thanks, pal.